Hi Year 4, welcome to your final English session of World Book Day. In today's session you're going to be focusing on the character of Eric in a bit more detail to write a character profile all about him. So you're going to be thinking about what he looks like, what his personality is like, what different things he does in a short story. And to start with, I want you to think, if you had to describe Eric in 3 words, what 3 words would you choose? So you're thinking about some adjectives. What 3 adjectives would you choose? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, shall I tell you my 3 words that I would describe Eric as? I would describe Eric as curious because he wants to find out about the world. He keeps picking things up to have a look at them. I would describe him as adventurous because he's travelled all of that way on his own. He's adventurous. He sure does like exploring and being adventurous. And also courageous. What does courageous mean? Courageous means brave. Eric is certainly brave. Travelling to a brand new place where he's never been before is a really brave thing to do. All on his own, where he knows no one, he knows nothing about the place he is, but he's there and he's doing it, and that is really brave. Now in today's lesson, we are going to be looking at writing a character profile for the character of Eric. I want you to imagine that you were describing Eric to a family member or a friend. What would you describe his appearance as? How does he look? How would you describe his personality? How would you describe what Eric does in the story? And how would you describe the changes that Eric goes through and what the changes that he faces as the story progresses? Pause the video and think about those 4 questions, please. Off you go. Okay, so we want to think about these questions, but I don't want to think about them with Eric, with you, in our lesson today, because that's going to be your job in your independent task. So what we are going to do is think about the character Fred from our book, The Explorer, and the traits that he has. So in a moment, this is going to be your sheet, all about a character profile. You're going to think about the appearance of Eric, the personality of Eric, what Eric does in the story, and how Eric changes from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. You might even want to think about how the book changes, because at first all the pictures were black and white, and then at the end of the story, what happened? Yeah, some colour came in the photo, lots of flowers, and it was blooming, and the flowers were really pretty and colourful. Now we're thinking about Fred. The first thing we want to think about is Fred's appearance. What can we describe about someone else then? Because of course we can describe Fred's appearance, but what exactly about him are we going to describe? Are we going to describe what he does? No. Are we going to describe what his personality's like? No. What does appearance mean? Pause the video and have a think. How did you get on? So let's think about, when I think about the word appearance, I think of facial features, what clothing they wear, and maybe even the colour of their hair. Now we're going to think about Fred's appearance, but we don't know what Fred looks like. And that's the difference between Eric and Fred. Because with Eric, we know what Eric looks like. But with Fred, we don't know what Fred looks like. So I want you to imagine if Fred was a real person, what would Fred maybe wear? What colour hair might Fred have? Pause the video again and have a think. Okay, when I think of Fred, I imagine, because Fred wants to be an explorer, I imagine Fred has got brown hair. I don't know why, I just think he might be brown. I imagine that he's wearing a cap because he wants to act like really mature, and maybe he wants to feel like an explorer, so he wants to wear a hat. I think Fred might be wearing maybe the colours he might wear, maybe he might be wearing some jeans, maybe he might be wearing a light grey top. And I'm going to put that into my appearance, but I'm not just going to list off in bullet points. I want to write it in a way, because we're still in English, I want to use those colours, those really imaginative colours. What other colours are there for blue? Oh, I've got navy, what other are there? Cobalt. So when I'm describing Fred's appearance, I'm going to say that Fred has short, dark brown hair. It's my expanded noun phrase. Easy peasy. He wears a cloud grey jumper, not just grey, a cloud grey, with cobalt jeans. That's another word for blue. He also wears a navy blue cap on his head, and that would be a perfect appearance. I can now close my eyes And I can then say that out loud and I will have an image in my head of what Fred looks like just because I know what he's wearing and I know what colour hair he's got. So when you're writing your appearance, to make sure that you're happy with it, close your eyes and ask someone else that you live with to read it back to you. And if you think, I've got a perfect image in my head of that now, then you've got a super appearance. Now we're going to think of Fred's personality. So what type of person is Fred and how do we know this? Think of 3 words to describe Fred, just like you did with Eric at the start of the lesson as part of your retrieval. Pause the video, 3 adjectives to describe Fred, please. Okay, what do you think of when you hear Fred's name? Well, I think Fred is very brave, just like Eric, very brave. There's similarities between those 2 characters there. Fred's brave because he takes on everything on his own. He's like a leader. I think Fred is very mature. Considering he's a child like the other children, he acts in completely different ways to Con and Max. And this shows me that Fred is a really mature child because he's taking ownership of what he needs to do. I think he's also very innovative. Innovative, what does that word mean? Innovative means that you come up with lots of brilliant ideas, and that's what Fred does. He came up with making the raft, he came up with making a fire for the den, he came up with making grass for a roof out of the leaves, and he's just fantastic. And I'm going to start to think, well, I'm not just going to bullet point brave, mature, innovative, am I? I could actually put it into a sentence, so I could start by saying Fred is a leader. He is brave, mature and innovative young man. He's not a child. I've actually gone back on my word about this idea of brave and mature by actually saying he's not a brave, mature and innovative child. He's a brave, mature and innovative young man. He is always positive and is always looking out for his friends. So I've got there those really nice adjectives, brave, mature, innovative, giving me those 3 adjectives, one after the other, really solidifying what I think of Fred. And now we're going to think, well, what does Fred do in the story? Well, we know he does lots and lots of different things. Can you tell me 3 things that Fred does in the story? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, so Fred does loads in the story, doesn't he? Fred makes a fire for the den. Fred makes a raft to sail down the river. He climbs a tree to retrieve some honey, even though it might be very dangerous. And he even finds a sardine tin and a red pouch too. So those are just 4 of the many things that Fred has done in the story. Now we need to again put this into a paragraph. Can you have a think? How would you word that paragraph to describe confidently and clearly what Fred does in the story? Pause the video now and have a think about that, please. Okay, so we don't have many lines here to write us our actions, but what we do have is some really great ideas, so we can expand on some of these. So I'm thinking, well, in the story, Fred often tries to take control, to try and find safety and to keep the other 3 children safe and alive. He makes a variety of things, such as a roof out of leaves, a fire for the den, and a raft to sail down the river. So those were just 2 of the things that I decided that Fred does, and I also mentioned that he makes a roof out of leaves. And then I've stated, well, he also climbs a dangerously high tree. We've got that adverb, dangerously. It's not just a high tree, it's a dangerously high tree, which actually goes back to my point of Fred being brave, to retrieve some honey so that the other children do not starve. Imagine if someone picks this character profile up. They now know what Fred looks like. They now know what Fred's personality is like. And this personality comes out further in the actions that Fred has done. We're now going to think of how Fred changes throughout the story. Now, this is the trickiest bit out of the whole of the character profile. We need to think, well, what aspects of the story have changed? We know that Fred's emotions have changed. He went from feeling very worried when he was alone when the plane first crashed. Then he went to feeling a bit nervous about meeting these 3 people. Then he went to feeling quite settled and relieved that finally these 3 people, Max, Con and Lila, were actually safe and they were actually good people. He's changed from his emotions. Also, what's changed is his surroundings. His setting has changed. He started off in the depths of the Amazon rainforest, and then he went into the clearing. That was another setting. They've climbed a cliff. The setting has changed. And that might change Fred's emotions further. Can you think of anything else that might have changed throughout the story? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, let's have a look at some ideas. So his emotions, his setting. He meets new people, so he meets Con, Lila. He also meets the man that they've recently just met. And also he encounters danger. So that danger of seeing those piranha and all the different animals that are quite nerve-wracking to them. They think that they're going to be dangerous towards them. Max at one point thought they saw sharks, but what did they see instead? Dolphins. So now I'm thinking, how can I add this to my final part of my character profile? Well, this is quite a big section because look, Fred changes throughout the story in a variety of ways. So I've stated that actually there's a lot of change in this story. When you're doing this for the story of Eric, there might be not a lot of things that change, but one thing that might change for Eric is that he went to the house and then he decided to leave really quickly. That's a really big change. Maybe he started off really unsettled in the house, but gradually, as he lived in the pantry for longer, he was settled. So let's go back to Fred then. He begins the story feeling extremely worried, so not just worried, extremely worried, but not worried, also anxious too, to be in the middle of nowhere alone. He then meets Lila, Max and Con, and this gives him security. So I've showed how emotions change from worried and anxious, secure and safe. Fred's emotions fluctuate means going up and down. When you fluctuate, you go up and down in your emotions. Throughout the story, as he encounters different levels of danger, such as climbing the towering tree, so not just the tree, the towering tall tree, and being faced with piranha. Ultimately, that adverb of time, this changes Fred to become a more courageous character. So again, backing up what I've said about his personality, that he's actually really courageous and brave. Okay, now it's your turn then to write your own character profile based on Eric. So the only thing I didn't do in my example of Fred was draw a sketch of Eric there, or well, Fred. Okay, so I want you to think about what Eric looks like, what his personality is like, what Eric does in the story, and how things change for Eric throughout the story, okay? I've given you this character traits word list here as well to help you out if you're struggling with any really super ambitious adjectives, because even though it is World Book Day, I want you to really blow my socks off, as always, with your fantastic adjectives, okay? And I want you to really try your best on this. I want you to imagine that someone is going to pick up your character profile and think, oh, I want to read this book because Eric sounds brilliant, okay? Can you do that? Super. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in tomorrow's videos for our final home learning day. Bye, Year 4.